Okay, we're going to get started now. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Between Two Teachers. And this is our Monday, August 23rd episode, bringing you news about good and bad about education today. So, my name is Consuelo Lara.
I'm Madeline Cronenberg, and as always, I want to begin with our land acknowledgement. We pause to acknowledge that we have gathered on the ancestral territory of Huichin, part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Karkin speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region, give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland. We offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people of the past and present. And so we now begin with all the education news that's fit to talk about. And some of it almost isn't fit to talk about. I'm going to start with, let's start in nationally. Let's start in North Carolina. In North Carolina, there was an effort to seat the People's School Board, as if everyone's school board isn't elected by the people. Yeah. And this effort was made because there is a very serious conversation in North Carolina around critical race theory, and the feeling that critical race theory is being taught in the Buncombe County, Asheville, North Carolina schools. So there was a very heated conversation, and it's all been, national media has been filled with all of the issues around critical race theory. This one bubbled to the top because the group that was there basically declared themselves the school board. They took over the meeting, and the school board ended the meeting and left without finishing it, I think. And then they came and sat in their seats and declared themselves the new school board. And then they held another meeting later as the People's School Board. And their issue is essentially around critical race theory.
Yeah, and the news was there, right?
Absolutely.
The media was there. You know, if they would not give these people so much airtime, you know, that they probably would have left. Oh, you're not on television anymore. So,
right.
You know, they just give them too much.
Well, and there's a lot of anger. There's no question. There's a lot of anger. They also were a part of the Unmask Our Kids group. So they sort of became they coalesced. And so the folks that are on both on that side of both of those issues seem to have a lot in common. So yeah. The folks that believe in that unmasking is somehow connected to liberty, and that they have a right to unmask, also believe that critical race theory hurts that somehow their children are being taught something that is unfair to them. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's belief.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. So this is happening all over the country. It's still happening, and it's happening locally in districts in Contra Costa County, and it's happening in many different places. And what's interesting is that the two groups have come together, and in some cases there are some large groups that have been funded by right-wing organizations. Because the right-wing organizations have written the legislation that prohibits critical race theory from being taught in throughout the country, right? And so you have all of these competing interests that are really creating a very serious political division, and it centers on school boards. Yeah. It centers on what's happening in education.
Absolutely targeting school boards. Yes. Absolutely.
It's a terrible story. Beyond that, schools are opening all over the country this week, and one of the places that had to put the schools over, and now they're putting it into September, for a unique reason, a reason that I haven't heard in other places. And this is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, another hilly place like San Francisco. They're proud of their hills, but it's hard to get around because it's a hilly town. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is short 356 school bus drivers.
Wow.
So that is a big problem,
Yeah.
right? And so you've got, everybody is short teachers.
Yeah.
West Contra Costa has no school bus drivers. They contract it out and it's only for special ed. But Pittsburgh has many. Obviously, if they're short 356, they have a lot more than that they're supposed to, and they don't. So they're not going to be able to open until they figure out a system that will allow them to operate with 356 less school bus drivers than they had before.
Right.
Very interesting problem. So we'll follow that, let you know, but it just shows you that what's happened in education and throughout the country is school bus drivers are not highly paid, right? And so if you're concerned about the health of your job, or if you're because of COVID, you've decided to retire anyhow and moves that up for you, they don't have that much to offer. I mean, it's not a high paid job, and it can be very stressful now because you're around children who are unvaccinated.
Yeah. And once again, who's suffering? Well, the children are not going to be able to get to school. So
Right.
once again,
Right. When everything was put together, I mean, there are teachers, everybody was ready. The buildings are ready, the teachers are ready.
they can't
School
get
bus drivers are not ready. So it just shows the puzzle pieces that all have to come together to make a school system work.
transportation.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yep.
But except when it's not. In West Contra Costa, it's not. But not everybody could have made the decision they made in West Contra Costa. The other big question, one of them is African-American students. There's a high number of African-American students nationally that have basically left the public school system, and the guess among the experts is that maybe they're all moving. There's an emphasis on moving to homeschooling, and so we're going to see if that is the case, and we can all see all of the decisions that are being made now that are different from the past are all COVID driven, right? And we know that, so that the COVID driven decisions are made on whether or not you're comfortable being vaccinated and you recognize the importance of masking, or you're not comfortable being vaccinated and you never want a mask. That's really where we're all separating out.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate. It makes everything so complicated for children.
Exactly. It makes everything complicated, and it's really, it's a sad story, but it's happening all over. In Marin, they had a Board of Education meeting that was shut down because of anti-masking protesters. But I wanted to mention them in particular because they are considering a daily at-home rapid testing for students. And everybody has to figure out what we're going to do with testing. And, a year ago, we didn't have anything available, really, where it was all just in the process of being available. Now it is. So now it's a question of choosing what's going to be available, and also choosing how you're going to share information out, what kind of dashboards you're going to have.
Yes. Yes.
What you're going to tell the public about your the various statuses. And the status people want to know is how many cases are at your school. What's
Yes. Yes, they do. Yeah. What is the authentic reported rate cases? People want to know that, and and they want to know how many people are vaccinated as well.
They absolutely want to know that, and that's that's a fair thing. You have school districts that are putting together very comprehensive COVID dashboards, right? And last year, depending if you were in a district that had all your kids online, that wasn't a big deal last year because you weren't in the school, you were online.
Right.
But the districts that did go back did implement those kinds of strategies so their families would know. And so it's not like you have to, there has been work done to create these. And so everybody needs to figure out a way to communicate to everybody's families vaccination rates and case rates.
Yes.
That's what people want to know.
That's what people want. Sure.
Right? And actually, if you had daily testing, that would tell you, right, here it is today, as of today, here's how many tested positive, and here's, and you just say, here's the school they tested positive at.
Yeah, and like you said, once you do that, you submit it, right? Automatically, it goes into the data bank or whatever. So
Right.
it could be current. Could be current.
It would be current every day. If you just said everybody has to do it by 7 o'clock in the morning, then you would know every day,
There you go.
right? And it's an extra thing to do, but it would solve that. Honestly, I think Marin's on the right track. I think that makes sense.
Good.
And it would help the conversation around masking. And masking, the folks at Burio have the top 200 districts, the largest 200 districts in the country they monitor. 55% of them have masks required, which means they're in states where you can have a mask mandate, right?
Okay.
But 43% are not.
Something. Oh gosh.
It's, it's very problematic, and it means that if you believe that masks are helpful, masks and vaccinations are helpful, then you have to just say, why wouldn't you do it? And it's not as if we don't do things to keep ourselves safe. We all stop at the stop sign, whether we want to or not. We stop at the stop sign because we're saving other people and we're saving ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, schools will close. We keep going this way. More and more schools are going to close. Be ready. Unfortunately.
And that's another whole thing, is being ready when that's done. So tell us what's happening at the county.
At the county office, a couple of things that we're busy working on right now, and that one is the interdistrict transfers from parents. Well, I have to say, they come in a panic. They are desperate. They need to change their child from one district into another. It usually has to do with those issues we keep bringing up over and over again: childcare,
right?
Adequate, accessible, affordable, quality childcare where they can feel their child is safe before school, after school, and transportation. And they have take their child over here to go to school, and then they have to go the opposite direction to go to work. Both parents work, or there's a single parent, these parents are real. I just feel so bad for them when they come for these appeals, to get an appeal, because it means that one or both of the districts,
they've already been rejected. You don't hear them unless they've been rejected.
They were denied, and so they come for us for an appeal, and it's just heartbreaking. And that they're not coming. It's not a frivolous thing to come for these appeals. So and then to know that it's larger issues that are causing this panic. It's just not fair. And the cities need to be involved, state and federal, the counties all need to, collaborate to address the issues of our families and our kids in these districts. So the second thing we're working on is the changing of district boundaries. And, one of the things I've always thought is school boundaries really are an equity issue. And so I'm really interested how this is going to play out. But one of the things, so the issue is that a boundary is cutting through a housing development. Well, so the housing developers just ignored the lines of the district and said, this is a good place to put a development. And so now we're stuck with trying to figure out how to divide this thing up, because it's not working. Like somebody said, it was cutting right through people's houses. And so, the house was being split up. So they have to now change these boundaries. And I can already see this is going to cause problems where my child's best friend across the street walks to school, but I have to go, I'm in another district, have to drive to take them to school. And so it's going to cause a lot more interdistrict transfers, I think.
Well, in Hercules, that happened. There's a part of Hercules that's in John Sweat for exactly that reason.
That's what happened. So these are not, I don't have the answers. This is hard. This is
Yeah,
really,
and it's happened before, because I mean, when developers, the deal is the way parcels are driven or are drawn, right? Real estate parcels, the way they're drawn, has nothing to do with how school district boundaries are drawn,
not at
right?
all.
Nothing whatsoever to do with it.
Nothing.
And they're drawn by different groups of people with at different times in history with different purposes. So it's not surprising that this happens a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that it then has to be readjusted one way or another, or people have to transfer if they're, I mean, this is sure, sometimes, the school across the street is, I am not in the district that allows me to go to the school across the street. This is that kind of story. Yeah.
It's that crazy. One of the things I'd like to see, and I'll bring that up to staff at the county, is put together a little report. Could be one pager. Here is a summary of interdistrict transfers from where to where, and what were the reasons.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
tell
the
us
big
whether they approved or not, but what were the reasons? And then, just like the percent of things that were childcare issues, the percent.
right.
I mean, I could take a document like that and talk to some city council people and say, look at
Right.
the percent of interdistrict transfers have to do with transportation. Isn't there something we can do about this? So that I think a little document like that might be useful.
And that's a very fair thing. It would have nothing to do with individuals.
No, it's information.
Yeah, just the information of, look, these are where these issues have come up.
Yeah. So I'm hoping we can do something like that. So that's the big, those are the two big things we're working on right now. And at the district in West Contra Costa, I know that two of the big issues that teachers need at each site for there to be the testing, they were promised there was going to be testing. That's not happening enough. And then, of
COVID
course,
testing. We're talking about COVID testing.
COVID testing, yes. That it would be regular, that it would be available. And then just, being honestly reporting those cases, much like you said about the dashboards, keeping those dashboards current so that teachers feel safe to go to work because they want to be in classrooms with their children.
And families want to feel it's safe to send their children.
Still want to feel very
right. And honestly, as we can see now, there's so much distrust. If you're not doing it, if you're not telling me, that's what will seed more distrust. More distrust is going to come not from telling people the truth, and telling you the truth and telling you the whole story is what builds trust. And we all just have to, that's not hard to figure out. You just have to do it, and more is better when you come to that kind of information.
And I just have a couple of positive things. Richmond High School is kind of my, my school I taught at, and etc. They're doing some very innovative things with CTE, and I'm just so proud of them. They're doing a future teacher class.
Yes.
Every school in high school in the state of California must have future teacher class, because the teacher shortage is not going to just be one generation. It's going to be at least two generations. So we need to start growing them. So good for them for doing that. They also got an entrepreneurship class, which I think is
excellent.
Wonderful. Isn't that great? I always share about the girls I mentor. A lot of them have little businesses going on. So
absolutely.
That's great. And then a fashion design class as well. So they're moving with CTE. I'm so proud of them. So that's some good news.
That's very good news. And I will end with good news too. I'm gonna give my shout out for best practices. And it's to a Las Virgenes Unified School District in Southern California, where they have put together something that the superintendent calls his COVID distance learning program. Now they have gone back to school just like everybody else, but they all recognize, and as is true throughout the state, that when you go back, if there are cases, COVID cases, the child who is COVID positive has to be quarantined. And right now, because there are not the distance learning classes, the Zoom classes that existed last year, that child, generally speaking, and in his very high performing affluent district, it was no different. They were then what they had to offer the children was a version of a short-term independent study. That's what they had.
Okay.
And so you would go into, just like if you were going on vacation. So this is a child, and many times these children are not sick. They're asymptomatic.
But they
So
test-
here you are, perfectly healthy, but
Yeah.
you can't go to school because you did test positive.
Okay.
So you have to maintain, you have to stay out for whatever the quarantine days are, and that leaves you disconnected from your classroom.
Yeah.
So what he has developed is a program that he calls a short-term quarantine virtual academy. And it's with Zoom teachers, so that the students are on Zoom. Well, I don't know if they have a packet, or they may not need a packet, or I mean, they all our kids throughout the state all have their tablets or their devices so that they can download something. Somebody can put it on Google Drive for them, so that you don't necessarily have to drive into someplace, but you're able to access it that way. And you then, the quarantine student is then able to be connected with on a daily basis by certificated staff.
There you go. That's wonderful. That is.
It really makes so much sense to me.
He's
and
putting
as
the
he's-
kids first, putting the kids, their needs first.
And not assuming this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Because,
It
oh,
will.
we're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. I mean, there are in 1 week, you had 20 schools in West Contra Costa that had children who would be in this situation, who in fact are in some version of independent study. And that, just so people understand, what that means is you're going to get a packet.
That's
You're
it.
going to get a packet. Right now, I do not know, and I certainly hope that there's a way that teachers can do outreach on Zoom, or somebody's doing outreach to these children, but I haven't seen anything organized as this superintendent has done, where he has just said, no, we're just doing it. We're doing it. And he gave it a name. He called it a short-term virtual academy. And any child who is unable to attend because of a positive diagnosis knows that that's where they're going to go. They're not left out there floating around with a packet.
There you go. That's our call to action, our best practice.
He is the best practice.
Yeah, every school district should do this. Every counties,
Yes,
they manage schools also. They need these for their.
exactly. I mean, this is something people need to, if he figured out how to do it.
To do it.
And he did it because I told him he has the resources, but we all have COVID resources now.
There's COVID money.
So you can't just say, oh, because he's, got what he has. And I'll say this is he had, and he said this, it was in an NPR interview. He has a very high performing districts, and he knew his parents weren't going to take a packet.
Very good.
Right. And he could see that. And so he said, I have to preempt any problems. And he did. So we can all learn from him.
Shout out. Very
Shout
good.
out to him, Superintendent Stepanovsky.
Awesome.
That's him.
Very good.
And the other one I wanted to do a shout out to is Culver City. Culver City Unified has been the first one in the state of California to mandate vaccinations for staff and students. All eligible students are mandated to be vaccinated by, they actually have a deadline in November to get it all done. But nonetheless, it's there. And if you choose not to be vaccinated, then you're going to be an independent study.
Wow. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Good for him.
That's how you do it. Right. And right now there's, a range. There are districts and schools that have a vaccination rate that reflects their community's vaccination rate. So in Contra Costa County, you have communities with very high vaccination rates. Their high schools, the schools where children are attending that are over 12 have very high vaccination rates.
Yeah.
And we can assume that's not as true for the areas that have low vaccination rates.
That's right. They go together. That's
right. They got to get, because mom and dad are not going to take their 12-year-old or their 13-year-old or their 14-year-old to be vaccinated if they're not vaccinated.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, but in Culver City, they're going to, because in Culver City, they're not going to go to school if they're not vaccinated. So
Good
a
model.
shout out to Culver City.
Yes, good model for us. Very good.
And that's enough for us this week.
That's enough.
We'll end on the happy note of Culver City.
Yes.
And we'll see you all next time on Between Two Teachers.
All right. Thank you. Oh, bye.